Module 4 is all about adding detail to your plans. So what we're going to do is we're going to start by drawing 2D elevations for the front, the rear and the sides of the design. Then I'll show you how you can add dimension lines to your plans. And finally, we'll add some labels to our plans. So that's the roadmap for today. So exercise 14 is about drawing your 2D elevations. So once you've completed your plans, you're ready to create some elevation views of your design. You can quickly create multi-story elevations using the Draw Elevation button. So there's a tool in the software for creating the elevations. So in this exercise, I'll show you how you can draw and place your elevations on screen. So as we work through today's exercises, you may want to refer to the diagrams in your supporting documents PDF. So I have brought up this drawing layout. So this shows how we're going to lay out the elevations on the plan. So we've got our ground floor plan and our first floor plan, which we've already drawn. And then underneath, we're going to place the front elevation, the rear elevation, and then the side elevations as well. So if I take you back to PlansXpress, we're going to start by drawing the front elevation. So if you want to draw an elevation, you need to go to the Views in 3D tab, and then you need to click the Draw Elevation button. So when you do that, PlansXpress will prompt you on the command window as to what you need to do to create this elevation. So just a quick point about drawing the elevations, and I'm just going to maximize this window so it's sitting nicely within the screen. There we go. So whenever you draw anything in PlansXpress, it gets placed on a layer. So the floors go on the floor layers, the roofs go on various roof layers, and so on. Now we want to place our elevations on the elevation layer. So at the very bottom of your screen, you'll see there's a layer drop-down box. Now, because I've just drawn my floor, it's saying floor at the moment. But what we want to do, if you click on that drop-down box, is scroll up a little bit and find the layer called elevations. If you select elevations, and then the elevations we're about to draw will go onto that elevation layer. And the great thing about layers is that you can switch certain layers off and on. So it may be things like your ceilings and your floors. You want to hide your elevations. You're probably going to want them visible at all times. So having the different layers allows us to make different elements visible or hidden on screen. So now we've got that elevation layer selected, we're going to follow the command window instructions to draw the elevation. When you're drawing elevations, it's always a good idea to use your first floor plan, or the plan, whichever plan has a roof on it, to help you mark out the elevation. So by using the plan which shows the roof, you can make sure the depth of the elevation extends beyond the ridge. So if you don't click beyond the roof ridge line, it won't necessarily include the whole roof in your elevation. This hopefully will become clear as we draw the elevation. You could click on points on the ground floor elevation to draw your elevation, but as I say, if you want to make sure your entire roof is included, then go for the first floor or whichever floor has the roof on it. The ground floor will automatically be included in the elevation too, so at the end of the process for creating your elevation, you're prompted, do you want to include all of the levels in the design? So again, we'll come on to that in a moment, and hopefully that will make a bit more sense. So the first instruction is give the wall on which the elevation will be based. So it means click on a wall which is going to be the basis for this elevation. So if we're doing a front elevation, then we want to click on one of the front elevations of the building. So using the first floor plan, click on any one of the front walls of the house. So just left click, single click, and release to select that wall as the basis for the elevation. Again, it doesn't matter if it's the gable or the wall that I just clicked on, either one will do. So the next instruction says, give the observation point for the elevation. So all you're doing is imagining if you're looking at a front elevation, then of course you're going to be stood in front of the building. So anywhere in front of the building, left click to show that that's the observation point. The next instruction is saying give the depth of viewpoint for the elevation. So we're showing how far back we want to include in the elevation. So this is why using the first floor plan is more helpful, because what we can do is we can move our mouse up the screen beyond the roof ridge, because we want to include the roof ridge in the elevation. Once your cursor's beyond the roof ridge, just left click again. So that's the depth of the elevation. The next instruction then says give the left extent point. So how much do we want to include to the left of our design? What I would do is click on the level box here. So that will make sure everything up to this point is included in the design. If I only clicked up to, say, here on the roof, then only up to that point would be included in the elevation. So make sure the entire design is included, give it a bit more space, so come a bit further to the left, and then again single click to register the left extent point. And then we need to do exactly the same for the right extent point. So the elevation will go from this point on the left to wherever we click. So again, we want to go beyond the right hand side of the design, and then right click to register a point beyond the right hand side of the property. That will mean that the whole of the building is shown in the elevation. Okay, we're nearly there with it. The next instruction is to give a reference point for the elevation. So we need to click on a point on the drawing, which is going to be used also to place the elevation on the page. So as always, I like to use the bottom left-hand corner of the building. So find the endpoint on the bottom left-hand corner and then single click again. So this is the point on our elevation that we're going to be placing on our drawing page in a moment. So the final instruction is give the relative point for the elevation. So where are we going to place it on screen? Now, I am zooming out so I can see a bit more of my drawing page. I'm panning up the screen, so I'm dragging the drawing page up. I'm going to place the front elevation at the bottom left of my drawing page here. I'm going to use what's called Intelli snap points to help me place the elevation in line with this plan. So I want it to be directly underneath the ground floor plan. So I can use an Intelli snap point to help me do that. So if you hold your cursor over the bottom left-hand corner of the ground floor plan, that endpoint there will turn pink. When you first hover over it, it's blue, and then it turns pink. Once it turns pink, move your cursor down the screen, and you'll see that dashed line appears. So PlansXpress is snapping to that point on the ground floor plan and using the X coordinate of it to help me place my front elevation. So I'm going to move my cursor down the screen until I'm happy with where the bottom left of this front elevation is going to go. So I'm going to go most of the way down the drawing page, and then I'm going to left click to place the elevation. Now this is where the dialog box appears saying, do you want to create the elevation for all of the levels? So do you want it for the ground floor as well as the first floor? So we need to click yes. And after a moment, that elevation will appear on screen, all being well. Now mine appears to have been drawn perfectly. Sometimes it might come out with little bits missing. Occasionally you might find an internal door or an internal feature is visible on the elevation, and that's because if your depth of your elevation is beyond the roof ridge, then perhaps some internal walls and doors are captured by PlansXpress and included in the elevation. If that happens, you can edit the elevation. If your elevation looks totally wrong at this point, which does happen, it happens to all of us, even when you've been using the software for ages, you can click on the elevation and you'll see it's just one big symbol at the moment. So you can delete it, start again, have another go if you need to. If it's mostly right, but there's something in there that you want to get rid of, or a line that you want to edit, then you can also do that. So you can click on the symbol to select it. As I said, at the moment it's one big symbol, so if I wanted to edit any of the things within that, I can't do it. To enable me to edit the different lines within the elevation, if I go to the Modify and Selection tab, there's a button in there called Explode. Now the Explode button will explode the elevation and break it down into its individual lines, which can then be edited or deleted as you need to. So I'll just show you this now. So click Explode. It asks if you're really sure you want to do this. I'm going to click yes for now. You don't have to do this at your end unless you want to. And then after a moment it's redrawn, and if I click on it, you'll see the elevation is now made up of multiple lines and symbols. So the windows within there are still symbols, so they're made up of multiple lines within themselves, but I can now edit the different elements of the elevation if I need to. So if there's an internal door in there, for example, I could click on it, press the delete key on my keyboard and get rid of it. Okay, so the principle is exactly the same for drawing a rear elevation or a side elevation. So what we'll do is we'll go through step by step drawing the rear elevation and the side elevations, and hopefully by the time we've done it 4 times, you will get a good feel for how to do it. So to draw another elevation, we can click the Draw Elevation button again on the Views and 3D tab. So this time we're drawing the rear elevation. I'm going to zoom in slightly on the first floor plan. So because we're drawing a rear elevation, the wall we're basing it on, of course, is the rear wall of the house. The next instruction is give the observation point for the elevation. So if I'm creating a rear elevation, then of course I'm going to be looking at it from the back. So click to place that observation point. So now it's asking for the depth of viewpoint for the elevation. So if I'm standing here in the garden looking at the back of the house, the depth of the viewpoint wants to be, again, beyond the roof ridge. This will ensure that the entire roof is included in the elevation. So click beyond the roof ridge, and then we have to give the left extent point and the right extent point for our elevation. So left and right are going to be back to front because we're looking at the property from the back, from the top of the page. So from here, the left point would be the right as you look at it on screen. So again, we want to click way beyond the left-hand point of the building so that we make sure we include everything that we need to in the elevation. And then we need to give the right extent point. So again, we're coming way over to what would be the right of the elevation as we look at the building, and click again to register the right extent point. So now we need to give the reference point. The reference point is the point we're going to place with our mouse click when we place the elevation view. So I'm going to use the right hand side of the first floor plan. If you can imagine, when we place the elevation, that's going to be placing the left hand side of the elevation as we did before with the front elevation. So you have to just imagine all the time that you're standing at the back of the property looking at the rear wall, and that will give you your left and right for these purposes. Okay, so click on that endpoint at the back right of the house, and the final instruction is telling us to give the relevant point for the elevation. I'm going to zoom out again. So what I want to do is I want to place this rear elevation under the first floor plan, but I want to line it up with the front elevation, and I want to line it up with the first floor plan. So I can do that using the Intelli snap points again. So if I place my cursor over the bottom left-hand corner of the first floor plan until that endpoint turns pink, I can then bring my cursor down, and PlansXpress is taking that X coordinate again to control the position of my cursor and therefore the elevation. But I want to be super clever, and I also want to use a point on this front elevation to help me place the rear elevation, so it all lines up neatly. So what I'm doing is I'm finding the endpoint on the damp proof course for this front elevation on the left hand side. So just find it again. So at the end of that blue line, the DPC, hover your cursor over that endpoint there until it turns pink, then move your cursor to the right, and you'll see PlansXpress will line up those 2 points that we've hovered over. And this is where we're going to place our rear elevation. So I'll do that again, talk you through it again. So I want to line my elevation up with this endpoint on the bottom left of the first floor plan. So find that endpoint, wait till it goes pink, then move your cursor down. Then I'm going to find the endpoint on the damp proof course. In fact, I could do it at this end of the front elevation, find that endpoint, wait till it turns pink, then move your cursor slowly to the right until PlansXpress locks into where those 2 points meet. Once you've found that magic point, so you'll have the dashed lines coming from both of those endpoints, click the left mouse button. PlansXpress will ask, do you want to create elevations for all levels? We're going to click yes please, and after a moment that elevation will appear on screen. So again, that's drawn it pretty nicely. There's just one thing that I want to tweak on here. If I zoom in here, this brick wall here is coming through my lean-to roof at the moment. So what I'm going to do is click on the elevation to select it. I'm going to go to the ribbon at the top of the screen. I'm going to click explode. Are you sure you want to explode all levels? I'm going to click yes. After a moment, it will be redrawn into all of its individual lines. So I just want to shorten this line for the wall on the right hand side of the elevation. So if I click on that line to select it, then using the handles, I can click on the handles at either end and use those to move the ends of this line for the wall. So I'm going to click on the bottom blue handle, move it up until I find a perpendicular point or intersection point where the wall meets the roof, and then click to trim the line. Click anywhere else on the screen to drop it, and you can see that elevation is looking pretty good now. Okay, notice also I've got this line on my front elevation. I'm going to trim that as well, so click on the handle on the end, move it to where you want it to be. Looks like there's a couple of lines actually there, so I've got to repeat that process. Okay, so if I zoom out again, we can see we've got the rear elevation sitting nicely next to the front elevation. So again, the process is exactly the same to draw our side elevations. We just have to click on the wall that we want to include in the elevation. Imagine we're standing looking at that particular wall and follow the instructions on the command window to mark out the extents of the elevation. So I'm going to click back on my drawing. So I've got the elevation with the utility door at the bottom. So I'm going to do the elevation of the left-hand side of the building now, and I'm going to place it at the top of the drawing page. So we're going to click Draw Elevation and just follow the instructions on screen. So click on the wall which the elevation will be based on. So again, we're going to use the first floor plan. This time we want to make sure that the depth of the elevation goes beyond the valley ridge to make sure everything's included in the drawing. So we're clicking on that left-hand wall to base the elevation on. The observation point would be standing looking from around here. Now give the depth of the viewpoint. So this is where I'm saying we need to click beyond that valley ridge. So we could click beyond the whole building to make sure everything we want is included in the depth of the elevation. So if we're standing here, our left extent point will be up the screen. So click way beyond the building to make sure we include everything going left. Then find the right extent point, so come way down the screen, make sure we're including everything in the right of the elevation. Then again, it's asking us to give the reference point. So I'm going to, again, click on the left-hand side of the elevation. So that's the top left corner of our first floor plan. Click on that to use as our reference point. Then I'm going to scroll out, move my page over by holding down that mouse scroll wheel to drag the page. And then, so it looks like I'm placing the elevation level with this part of the building. So again, we can use those Intelli snap points. So hovering your cursor over the relevant endpoint. Once it turns pink, move your cursor to the right to where you think you want to place your elevation. Those dashed lines will appear, showing you that PlansXpress is using that Y coordinate to help us place the side elevation. So once you're happy with its position, left click, click yes to drawing all of the levels, and the elevation will appear on screen. So this is one of those times where, because I clicked my depth of the elevation beyond the building, it's actually included this utility door because I've gone all the way through to the other side of the building. So again, I need to do a little bit of playing around, a little bit of editing of this elevation. Alternatively, I could redraw it and not include that far wall in the elevation. In fact, I'm going to do that. I'm going to redraw it this time. So I've clicked on the elevation to select it. I'm going to press delete. And I'm going to go through the process again. I'm going to do this a bit more quickly this time. Hopefully you can follow what I'm doing. So click on the wall, which is being used for the elevation. Give the observation point. Give the depth of viewpoint just beyond the valley ridge. Give the left extent point, the right extent point, reference point, so the left-hand side of the elevation. Mouse over that endpoint to use the Intelli snap point, and then click to place the elevation. Yes, to draw all of the levels. And again, it's done it again. Okay, I'm going to click on the elevation. I'm going to click the explode button to break it into its constituent parts, its constituent lines and symbols. And I'm going to say, yes, I want to explode this elevation. Once it's exploded, I can click on that door, delete it, click on this line, delete it. And I don't need this line here in the elevation, so I'm going to click on the line to select it. I'm going to click on the end of it and shorten it, take it back to the lean-to roof. So you can see how quickly you can edit those elevations if there's any tweaks you need to make. So we've got 3 of our 4 elevations, so I'm now going to do the right side elevation. So click draw elevation again. So I'm going to go right to the far end because we want to include the lean-to roof in there. Left extent point, right extent point, reference point. Hover over these points again. Create all levels. Oh, there we go. Worked first time using the ground floor plan. So hopefully you're getting a feel for how you can draw those elevations and then how you can tweak them if there's any little bits that you want to adapt. And then you can do that by exploding the elevation first. If you haven't exploded an elevation, there's quite a nifty tool. So if I made a change to my drawing, so say for example I put a window, so I'm going to put a window in this ensuite up here. So I'm going to go to the architectural tab and select windows. You don't have to do this at your end, you can just watch if you'd rather. So I'm going to place a window, it doesn't matter exactly where, but on that right hand wall. So once your window's in place, you might think, oh my goodness, I need to redraw this elevation. I've changed my design, but I need to redraw the elevation. Now, if you haven't exploded an elevation, that's the crucial point. If you haven't exploded an elevation, you can do what we call recalculating the elevation. So you're just basically asking PlansXpress to draw it again and to look for any changes. So I want to update this elevation to show that window. So if I click on the elevation, and then if I middle click, so click the scroll wheel on my mouse, in there is an option called Recalculate Elevation. So if you make any changes to your plans and you haven't exploded the elevation, you can recalculate it and PlansXpress will redraw it without any more effort on your part. So I'm going to click Recalculate Elevation, and then the elevation will be updated to reflect the changes you've made. So there we can see that window has appeared. So unfortunately, because I've exploded these other elevations, that recalculate option isn't available. But for any elevation that hasn't been exploded, if you make a change to your plans, you can update the elevation. So it was just a case of selecting the elevation, middle clicking, and clicking Recalculate Elevation. Okay, I'm going to delete that window now, if I can select it. And I'm going to recalculate again because it's upsetting me that the window isn't in line with the door below. So click on the elevation, middle click, recalculate. Oh, there we go, it's removed it again. Okay, so that is how we can draw our elevations. If you want to, you can also add extra detail to your elevations. So say you wanted to add some landscaping, some trees, some people, some vehicles, then you can do that. If you go to the non-estimated symbols tab, in there you can add all sorts of different non-estimated symbols to your plan. So if you're just drawing, it doesn't matter to you that they are non-estimated. If you are estimating your plans, once you've completed your design, then you just need to be aware that the things that you're adding to your drawing will not be estimated in Estimator Express. So that's why they're called non-estimated symbols. But as I said, if you're just drawing, you're just designing, then that's obviously not a factor for you. So on the right hand side, we've got a landscape drop-down menu. If you click on that landscape drop-down menu, in there you'll see we have got various trees and plants in plan. We've got fences, we've got trees in elevation, and then we've got people, family groups, and we've got vehicles. So it may be that you want to add a dog running around, just to make the design a bit more human. So let's have a go at adding a tree. So I'm going to scroll back up to the tree elevations. I'm going to let's pick this narrow tree here. We haven't got a huge amount of space to play with. So you click on the symbol you want to insert. It asks you which layer you want to put it on. So elevations is perfect. Or you could select, you could select the landscaping layer so that you can switch off the landscaping if you want to. So I'm going to click OK. So you can see my cursor is controlling the position of this tree. If you want to change the size of it, you can change the scale here. So maybe I want it to be 80% of the size. I can change that to 0.8. So that's a bit smaller now. Also, if you want to, using the tools right at the bottom of your screen, you can change the colour. So after the layer drop-down box, there's a colour drop-down box. You could change that to green. I'm going to select the green pen. I think the colour will show when we place it. So what I'm going to do is just in between these elevations here, just to show you how to do it. You might want to use an endpoint on the elevation to help you place the tree. So one click to place it. The first click places the tree, and the second point controls its orientation. So if you want it to be straight, then you want to move your cursor to the right. You could snap to a point to the bottom of the elevation. That would make it straight, or you can hold down the Shift key. As you know, holding down Shift places objects straight or at right angles. Then after a moment, then that tree has been drawn, and it's in that green pen that we selected using the colour option at the bottom of the screen. You can see how you can quickly add some detail to your plans. That looks a bit strange floating there. It may be that you want to extend your ground floor to show the ground level. So I'm going to click on the ground level of the front elevation. You'll find there's a line there. I can stretch that line right the way across to my rear elevation, and that will create the ground level. You might want to do it on each side of your elevations. So again, click on the ground floor level, the ground level, sorry, of the elevation. Click on the handle at the end of the line. Press the Shift key. That will keep the line straight, and then click to place to extend the ground level as far as you want it to go. So again, I can do that on the other side of the rear elevation. Zoom in to make sure you're clicking on the right line. Click on the blue handle on the end, hold down the Shift key, and click on the point you want to extend the ground level to. So maybe you want to add a person to your drawing. I'm going to go back to that landscaping drop-down menu. Landscape, I should say. Scroll down. I'm going to add a father and his children. I'm going to pop it on the landscaping layer. That'll be fine. Click OK. This time I don't want them to be green though, so I'm going to go to the colour option at the bottom of the screen. Change it back to black. I'm going to zoom in. At the moment their scale is 0.8 because it's remembered the scaling options for before, so I don't think I want them to be 0.8. I think that's going to make them a bit small. It's obviously drawing them to scale. So if I make that 1, then hopefully they'll be the right scale for the building. So I'm just going to snap to the ground level here to place the symbol. And then again, I'm going to hold down Shift key and click again to select the rotation and make sure they're standing upright. For some reason, they've been drawn in green. Click on them again. I'm going to select a different layer. I'm going to select right at the top there's a layer called Untitled. That's just a simple black layer. Change them to the Untitled layer. It seems to have sorted that out. So that's how you can add extra little embellishments to your elevations to make them look even more real. Okay, so that completes our exercise on drawing elevations. How are we getting on with that? I know some of you are just observing, but does that make sense? You're getting a good feel for how you can draw your elevations. Hopefully you are. Hopefully that's making sense. Okay, so Exercise 15 is all about adding dimension lines to your external walls and to give internal room measurements as well. So we've got a couple of different tools that we can use for adding dimension lines. So the first thing I want to show you is how you can use the automatic wall dimension tool to add dimensions to your external walls. So the automatic wall dimension tool allows you to quickly measure and display dimensions for an entire wall, including the length of each wall and all of the openings within the wall. It also gives the dimension for the entire length of wall. So you'll see what that means in a moment. So if we click on a wall, let's first click on the front wall of the ground floor. Let's zoom in, so you might want to use your scroll wheel to zoom in. Drag that front wall into the middle of your screen. So if you click on a wall, you get a selection of wall tools appear, as hopefully you remember from when you're drawing your walls. Now on there's a button called Dimension Wall. So if you click a wall, these tools appear, and on there we want to click the Dimension Wall button. Now if you move your cursor on screen, you'll see that PlansXpress has automatically added dimensions for each length of wall for each of the windows and the doors within that section of wall. Now all we need to do is click to place the dimension lines, but before we do that I want to make sure we put these dimension lines on the right layer. So using the layer drop down box at the bottom of your screen, click on the drop down box and scroll up to the dimensions the dimensions layer. So within that layer box, scroll up, find dimensions, click to select it. We want to place the dimensions on their own separate layer. That means we can switch the dimensions on and off as needed. So now, as I said, it's just a case of clicking to place the walls, to place the dimensions on screen. So work out where you want to place them and then left click, and all of those dimension lines will be placed in one go. The PlansXpress is inserting multiple dimensions for the wall, the windows and door. Now that has disappeared, and what that means is that my dimension layer is switched off. So if we go to Views and 3D, or it's auto saving as well. Oh no, there we go. No, we're all right. It was auto saving, so it was taking a while to show them. If a layer is switched off, so if I'd switched off the dimension layer on my plans, then you might place something and it just disappears like it's not placed it. Well, it has placed it, it's just that you can't see it because the layer is hidden, so that's something to be aware of. But luckily enough, the dimension layer is switched on, so that's fine. So let's have a go at adding dimension lines to the that front gable wall. So again, left click to select the wall. There's another way of bringing up the auto dimension wall dimension tool. Once a wall is selected, if you middle click, so press down the scroll wheel on your mouse, on the middle click menu there's an option called Dimension. If you click that, it brings up exactly the same tool. So there's two ways to use the auto dimension tool. You can click on the wall tools on the ribbon at the top of the screen, or you can middle click and click dimension that way. So again, our mouse click is just going to determine the position of these dimension lines. A really neat way of making them line up, so if we want to make these line up with the first batch that we placed, is to find the endpoint on the end of an arrow that you've already placed, and it will line up the ends of each of those dimension lines. So find that endpoint and then click to line up your dimension lines. Again, I think it's taking a moment to think about that. And there we go. So you'll see how quickly you can add all of those dimension lines to your drawing. So using either the dimension wall button on the wall tools at the top of your screen, or middle clicking and clicking dimension, whichever way is easier for you, makes most sense. Carry on adding the dimension lines all the way around your ground floor plan. So I'll do it one more time with you, and then I'll remain quiet so you can have a go at your end. So click on the wall to select it. Click the dimension wall option, and then click to place your dimension lines on screen. Okay. So I'm going to quietly do it at my end and give you the chance to have a go at your end. Sometimes zooming in, especially when you're placing lines which are close to other dimension lines, sometimes zooming in can really help you position things where you want them to go. Got a couple of slightly more awkward dimension lines to place on here. Hopefully you're managing to place them okay at your end. Okay. So there, hopefully you can see how in a couple of minutes you can add your dimension lines to all of your external walls. Of course, you may also want to add internal dimensions to your plans, and you can use linear dimension lines to do that. So this is a different dimension line tool that we've got. So linear dimensions are useful for showing internal dimensions of rooms. So if you click on the Drawing and Annotation tab, on the right hand side we have a set of different dimension lines. So as I said, we want to use the linear dimension button. So click on the linear dimension button. So we're going to start by adding dimensions to this room at the front left of the house, the lounge, I should think. So we've got the linear dimension tool selected. The command window, the instructions are telling us to give the first point. So what you want to do is find an end point on one of the corners if you're going to measure along the edge of the room. You could also just use a nearest snap point or a midpoint on the inside of the wall. Of course, the important thing is to make sure it's an internal snap point that you're clicking on. So once you've found the first point that you want to measure from, left click to place the start of the dimension line. And then you want to locate the perpendicular point. I want to zoom in a bit. Or it might be an end point if you're using the corners of the room to indicate where the second point of the dimension line will go. So click again to place the end point of the dimension line, and zoom out if you've zoomed in like me. And you'll see now your cursor is controlling the position of the dimension line. So all you need to do is left click when you're happy with the position of the dimension line to place it. So because we're still doing dimensions, we haven't changed tools, that these are all still going on the layers, the dimensions layer as we want them to. Okay, so we've placed one dimension line. If we want to place another dimension line, we can right click to tell PlansXpress to do the same action again, to place another dimension line. So I'm now going to do the dimension for the width of the room. So I'm just going to find the nearest snap point this time on the left hand side of the room. Click to place the first point of the dimension line. Then on the opposite side of the room, find a perpendicular snap point if you can. That means the dimension line is straight, so your dimension will be accurate. Again, left click to place the second point of your dimension line. Then again, simply click to place the dimension line on your plans. Okay, so it's really straightforward adding your dimension lines. You just need to go to the Drawing and Annotation tab, click Linear Dimension, and then click on 2 points, one at either side of either end of the room, to do those internal room measurements. So I'm going to drag my page down. I'm going to add the dimension lines to this room at the back with the rear projection. So I could go back to the linear dimension button, back to the linear dimension button, or I can right click to use the same tool again to draw another dimension line. So again, just click. Perhaps easiest just to find a nearest snap point on the inside of one of your walls, then find the perpendicular snap point on the opposite side of the room, left click again, place your dimension line, left click again to place it. Right click to repeat the process. I'm going to find a nearest snap point again on the left, perpendicular snap point on the right, clicking on each of those snap points, and then you can place your dimension line. Now I've deliberately placed this dimension line so that it overlaps another dimension line. So occasionally you might place a dimension line, but subsequently you want to move it because it's not placed ideally. Perhaps you've got things overlapping. Sometimes when you add your room labels, you realise you need to move your dimension lines a little bit. So to move a dimension line, click on it to select it, and you'll see a number of blue handles appear. You remember that handles allow you to modify the item that you've got selected. So if you click on the blue handle, which appears on the dimension line itself, so not on the measurement, but on the dimension line itself in the middle, not on the ends either. The ends are the points that you clicked on to place the dimension line. What we want to do is move the whole dimension line. To do that, click on the blue handle on the line itself, and you're then controlling the position of the dimension line, so you can move it into a more satisfactory position. So I'll show you again. So click on the dimension line to select it. Then you can click on the blue handle on the line itself, and you can use that to move the dimension into place. Okay, so let's continue in this way, placing the dimension lines on all of the other rooms within our ground floor. Right click, click on one side of the room, then find the perpendicular snap point, then click to place the dimension line. Right, I'm going to quietly carry on doing my dimension lines and give you the chance to have a go at doing it at your end without me talking you through step by step. Okay, so hopefully you're getting the hang of that. It's just takes a couple of minutes, and of course you can repeat the same process to do your internal room dimensions for your first floor as well. So those are the two different dimension tools I wanted to show you. So we've got the automatic wall dimension tool for doing your external wall measurements, and then we've got the linear dimension tool, which is a quick way of doing your internal room measurements. Okay, so I've been a bit naughty, I haven't saved for a while. Make sure with each element you add to your drawing that you always go to the File menu, go to Save, Save As, and give your drawing another number. So I'm calling it Upton Fields 11. And then if anything goes wrong, my computer crashes, or I realise that I want to go back and make some changes to my design before I add my dimension lines, it means I don't have to go around deleting all the dimension lines and then make the changes. I can just go back to the previous drawing to do that. So save regularly, add a number each time. That should save you a headache in the long run if you need to make any changes. Okay, so that's the exercise on adding dimension lines finished. So the final exercise, exercise 16, is a really simple one. It's about adding labels to your drawing. So in this exercise, I'll show you how you can use the notes picker to select labels and place them on your drawing. And I'll also show you how you can change the font style and size if you need to. So hopefully you can see in your supporting documents document at your end, we've got this exercise on adding labels, and there you'll see we've got a layout of the ground floor and the first floor with the room labels on there. So that's what we're aiming to do during this next exercise. So if I go back to PlansXpress, so on the right hand side of your screen, alongside where you've got the 3D view, you may be able to see the Notes Picker tab. So click on that if you can see it. If the Notes Picker isn't currently visible on screen, go to the Views and 3D tab, and just underneath where it says Views and 3D, there is a Notes Picker option. Tick that box and that will bring the Notes Picker up on screen. So the Notes Picker window comes pre-populated with a long list of room labels and also drawing labels which you may find useful to place on your drawing. So the idea is that you've got them there, you don't have to type them out. So let's start with our kitchen label. You might need to scroll down your screen if your screen's a bit smaller than mine to find it. So they are ordered alphabetically as you might expect. So when you find the kitchen label, double click on it to select it. And then if you place your cursor on the drawing area, you'll see that your cursor is controlling the position of the label. Once a label is selected, on the ribbon at the top of the screen, you'll see we've got a number of different text options. So if you want to change the font style, this is the place to do it. So click on the font drop-down box, and you can select a different font style. So if you've got a company font style that you usually use, select that from the drop-down box. You can also change the size of the label. So if I think that's a little bit too small, where it says height, increase the number to make it bigger, decrease the number to make it smaller, and change that to 200. And then I've clicked the enter key on the keyboard to register that change. So yeah, that looks like a better size. Of course, you can also change the font to bold or italic, underlined. You can change the alignment. So the alignment means where you're placing your label. So if you want to place the left-hand side of it, select the left alignment. If you want to place the middle of it, select the middle alignment. And you can do the same with your vertical alignment as well. So whichever makes most sense to you is fine. So I've selected the middle alignment, center alignment on the horizontal and the vertical plane. So I'm placing the very center of the label. So play around with the font style until you're happy with it. And then all you need to do is left click on your drawing and that will place the label. So it's just a case of repeating this process and you can place all of the labels in all of the remaining rooms. So I'm going to scroll down the notes picker. I'm using the scroll wheel on my mouse to do that. I'm going to find the lounge label, double click on the label to select it. PlansXpress remembers your font settings, so whatever you've selected in terms of the font style and the size and the alignment, it will remember that for any subsequent labels that you place. So make sure you set up the font as you want it first time round, and then you don't need to do it again. So just a case then of simply single clicking with your left mouse button to place your labels. So I'm going to scroll up. You can carry on placing them according to the layout on your diagram that you've got, or you could even use some different labels if you want. Whatever you fancy is absolutely fine. Just have a practice at double clicking on the room label and then single clicking to place it. The thing I always forget is that you need to double click on the label on the notes picker. So make sure you double click and not single click. It's easy to single click and then stand there waiting. So when you're placing your room labels, this might be when you think, I'd like to move my room dimension slightly so that it's not overlapping or it's not so close to the room label. So at this point you can obviously move your dimension lines. So remember to click on the handle which is on the line itself, not on the measurement. I'm going to move this over a little bit. If you zoom in, you get more accuracy when you're placing items. Zoom out again. Okay. I'm going to add a label for the hall. Double click to select the label, single click to place it. I'm going to finish off with a study. Okay, so that's how you can add room labels to your drawing. If there is a label that you want to use that isn't already in the list, then really quickly you can add it in. So say for example, your client has talked about having a snug. Just type in the label that you want to add, then click the add button. If you misspell it or you subsequently decide you don't want it in the list, you can click on it and then press the delete button to get rid of it. So I'm going to add it back into the list, and then of course it gets added in alphabetical order and you can double click and add it to your drawing. Okay, as well as the room labels, of course, you can add labels for each of the parts of the drawing. So here we might want to add a ground floor layout. So in our notes picker we've got 3 options actually. You could call it ground floor, you could call it ground floor layout or ground floor plan, whichever terminology you like to use. Double click to select the label. I'm going to make this font a little bit bigger, this text a bit bigger for the diagram label, so I'm going to change the height to 300. Enter on my keyboard to register that change, and then I'm going to click to place the label. So I've just realised, looking at the layer drop-down box at the bottom of the screen, that PlansXpress is putting these text labels on the dimensions layer. which might not be ideal, because I might want to switch the dimension lines off to print out certain views of the drawing, but I might want the room label still to be on there if I'm showing a room layout. So if you click on the text label, click on the layers drop down box, scroll down, there you'll find a text layer. Yes, I want to change the layer of that item to text. So I can do that for multiple layers. So I can do that for multiple labels. So if I click on one label, then hold down the control key, click on the other labels. Oops, I've selected the wrong thing. So click on it again to unselect it. And click on my room labels as I wanted to. So I've selected all my room labels, then I can go to the layers drop down box, again scroll down to text, click on text. Yes, I want to change them all to the text layer. Okay. So the way to make sure those labels go on the right layer is before you start placing them, select the text layer from the drop down box. So if I want to add my first floor layout label now, that will go on the text layer, which is what I want. So change the height of that to 300. And I'm going to place it underneath my first floor plan. Okay, and then of course, I want to add labels to the elevations. So place your side elevation label, front elevation label, and the same with the rear elevation and the other side elevation. Okay, so that's how you can very quickly add text for your room labels and your drawing labels. I'm going to go back to the 3D view. So we've talked a little bit about how you can navigate the 3D view at various stages of your design to check that you're happy with what you've drawn, that you've drawn things correctly. So we hold down the, we hold down the left mouse button to rotate the building around. And we can go side to side and also top and bottom. If you want to take a snapshot of your design, so perhaps you want to use these 3D model images to share it with your client when you're, if you're doing an estimate, you might want to include it alongside your quote. For example, you can click the Save button here on the 3D view window. So if you click Save as Image, you can save that current view as it looks at the moment to file, and then you can attach it to an email or you can print it out, as I say, to show to your client. And remember, using the visibility menu, you can decide what you want to show on screen. So you might want to remove the roof, so you can untick Show Roofs. That's a really interesting thing to do when you're doing a loft conversion, so you can see the space in the loft. You might want to remove the ceiling as well. So if I untick Show Ceilings, then I should be able to see the first floor layout. I can also, as I showed you last time, hide one of the levels. So if I hide level 2, I can hide the first floor. We can look directly into the ground floor, so we've got that ground floor layout. Again, you might want to save snapshots of the model so that you can show them to your client. So I'll switch all of those different components back on. Switching my roof back on, the ceiling as well. If I rotate it back around, there we go. And of course, there's different modes that you can view the 3D model in. So you can go for a solid view, for the textured view. We have a wireframe view, which is quite funky, and we have a transparent view as well. So when you've got time, have a little play around with the different modes and the visibility options on there to see how you can interact with your 3D model. If you want to take your 3D modeling to the next level, then of course we also have our 3D photo visualizer. This is included as standard with the PlansXpress Premium edition. So if you have that 3D photo visualizer tool available, on your Views in 3D tab, if you click 3D photo visualizer, that launches an add-on, which allows you to apply different materials to your 3D model. It allows you to select backgrounds, apply lighting schemes, and to render your drawing. You can create some photorealistic views of your design. So you can see that 3D model has been imported from PlansXpress, so we can now have a play around with it. So you'll see we've got various options along the top. So the first one is materials, so we can select some different materials. So we could have a look, see what the design looks like if it's stone, or perhaps you could use a different tone of brick. And of course you can present the different options to your client if that's helpful to them. So I'm going to select this different red brick. You can see each of the sections of wall is a separate piece of wall, so that's quite handy if you want to do something like a half rendered design. So if it's half stone, half render, or to do these last couple of walls, or of course you can do half brick, half renders. A lot of property like that around here. So I can select the plastering materials, select plaster. Let's half render this gable here. Okay, so at the moment we're interacting with the 3D photo visualizer. We haven't rendered the pictures yet, so they don't look as good as they can. I'll show you how to render them in a minute. You can select a background, so you can have plain backgrounds as we've got now, or you can select rural views, for example, if you want to have some trees and sky in the background. So you can select a background, and of course you can select a lighting scheme. So I'm going to select daylight, sunny. I'm going to drag it onto the 3D model. That lighting scheme is applied. I'm going to go back to that background I had before though. So it's retained the lighting scheme, but I'm using a different background. And then I can control everything from the height of the sun, the rotation of the sun, so I can create some nice shadows that look really effective when I render the image. So this is like a speed tour of what you can do on here, but once you're happy with the materials you've selected, with the background, with the lighting, you can then render the image. If I click back to PlansXpress, so you can see the difference in what you can create. I've just been playing around with that for 2 minutes, haven't I? But you can see the level of detail you can achieve with PlansXpress Premium and the 3D photo visualizer. And of course, it's really nice to be able to play around with things like the materials as we've done there. You can also colour the doors and the window frames. You can make surfaces more reflective. You can apply different tile finishes. It's really a really powerful tool. And if it's something that you're interested in that will help your business stand out from the competition, then it's definitely something worth considering having. Okay, so that's a mini tour of the 3D photo visualizer for you. So I've covered everything that I wanted to cover in today's module. So thank you for listening. Hope you've picked up some new tips and skills today. So what I'll do is I'll do the quiz questions for module 4 now for the day. So bringing up our poll questions, our quiz questions. So this is all about the skills that we've practiced today, so drawing elevations and adding detail. So the first question is, which floor of the design should I click on and around when creating an elevation? Should I click on either floor? Should I click on the ground floor, the first floor, or should I click on the floor with the roof? I'll give you a moment to have a think. Click on the answer you think is correct. This is an interesting starting point, this one. It's probably less black and white, but have a think and click on the option you think is the correct one. Okay, so we've had people answering either, and we've had people answering the floor with the roof on. And actually, both of those are correct, because technically you can draw the elevation using either the ground floor or your first floor plan. At the outset, I suggested that using the floor with the roof on is usually the best approach, because it ensures you can include the roof line, the ridge line of your roof in your elevations, that you don't miss anything out. But you saw that when I was drawing my final side elevation, actually using the ground floor plan was more effective. So I would say in the first instance, use the floor with the roof on, but you can use either, as long as you're aware that you're including the extents of the elevation, so left and right, the depth, so the height of your elevation. Make sure you're clicking as far as you need to go to include everything in your elevations. Okay, thank you for that one. The next question is also about elevations. I want to edit the lines within an elevation, so I want to make some changes. What do I need to do first? Do I need to recalculate the elevation, explode the elevation, copy the elevation, or delete the elevation? What do you need to do if you want to edit an elevation? What do you need to do first? Okay, 100% correct answers on this one. You need to explode the elevation. That breaks it down into its constituent lines and symbols, and then you can then delete and modify those lines and symbols within it as you need to. So that's brilliant. Well done. Thank you. Okay, last one on elevations. Which tab should I go to in order to add extra details to the elevations? So if you want to add landscaping, people, vehicles, and so on, should I go to the Drawing and Annotation tab, the Views and 3D tab, the Modify and Selection tab, or the Non-Estimated Symbols tab? Okay, so the correct answer for this one is the Non-Estimated Symbols tab. If you go to the Non-Estimated Symbols tab, there is a landscape drop-down menu, and from there you can add those extra landscaping details to your elevations. Okay, thanks for that. So 2 questions left. So on to drawing dimension lines. So if I want to automatically draw dimension lines for an external wall, what do I need to click? Do I click the dimension wall button on the wall tools on the ribbon at the top of the screen? Do I middle click, then click dimension on the middle click menu, or do I do either of the above? Okay, so the correct answer is either of the above. So there's two ways of auto-dimensioning your walls. You always need to start by selecting the wall, and then you can click Dimension Wall on the menu at the top of the screen, or you can middle click and select Dimension that way. Okay, and the final question concerning labels. Which window do I use to add labels to my drawing? Do I use the Notes Picker, the Properties Explorer, the 3D View, or the Command window? So where do I add labels to my drawing from? Okay, nice easy one to end on. So it's the Notes Picker window. So if you can't see the Notes Picker window on screen, remember to go to the Views and 3D tab. On there, you can switch on the different windows. So if Notes Picker is not visible, tick the Notes Picker tick box and it will appear on screen so that you can select those labels and add them to your drawing. Okay, so that is our mini quiz for Module 4 done. Thank you for taking part in that. Okay, so that's the end of our course. I shan't keep you anymore. Thank you ever so much. Take care. As I say, get in touch if you've got any queries or anything you need help with, and your account manager will be in touch in due course, I think. So, all right, guys, thank you so much, and I will hopefully speak to you again at some point in the future. Thanks, Em. Goodbye.